Welcome to Shadow Daddy Groupies, where we thirst over morally questionable men and call it literary analysis.
I'm Raven.
And I'm Kelly. If it's broody, powerful, and emotionally unstable, we're already on our knees.
So grab a drink, abandon your responsibilities, and let's talk books, tropes, and our inability to resist a man with a big sword collection.
Because here at Shadow Daddy Groupies, we like our books how we like our men. Long, hard, and absolutely wrecking us.
Hi, I'm Raven.
And I'm Kelly.
Welcome to Shadow Daddy Groupies podcast.
And today we are going to be interviewing author Liv Zander. She wrote books such as
Feather So Vicious,
and
Shadow So Cruel, and then go ahead. So we're going to be interviewing her today. I'm so excited because I absolutely love these books, and I have to say it is probably on my top 3 of favorite reads of all time. That's pretty big. I read a lot of freaking books. And I just want to give a warning, trigger warning. There is a lot of violence, essay, rape, pretty much all the triggers you could think of are in this book. So no young ears. We'll put a little intro of that in, Kelly, once you record that.
Yeah, I remember when Raven started telling me about how excited she was about this book. So she could not wait for me to read it. And then before I even finished, she had reached out to the author to ask if she could come on to this podcast. So I'm stoked to talk to Liv today.
And this isn't even your genre either. This is
not my genre. I'm not really a dark romance girly, but I have to say that I really enjoyed the writing, the plot, the pacing, all of that. Even if dark romance isn't your thing, I feel like you can still appreciate a good writer when you read one.
Just please, the trigger warnings are not lying at all.
I think I refer to this as a volcano of spiciness.
No, this is my volcano, yeah. I think this would be a volcano for me too.
She's here. She's here.
Yay! Is it gonna record?
I'm recording.
Okay.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, I'm so excited to meet you.
Same. I just got out of the shower, so I look a little bit disheveled. I'm sorry.
I also just got out of the shower too. That's why my hair's up.
I'm going to a concert tonight with my son. So lots of stuff happening today. So I was like, before I go get ready for the concert, I have to do this with you guys. But I love meeting you.
It won't be long. I promise. We won't take too much of your time.
All right.
I really appreciate you coming on. This is really exciting for us.
Well, I'm excited that you reached out and, wanted to talk to me.
Are you okay with this being recorded?
Absolutely. That's completely fine.
I did read on your thing that your mom doesn't know anything about your books and she doesn't know what you write. So I didn't know if you were hiding that.
It's completely fine. My mom is in Germany, so she's not gonna come across this anyway. So it won't.
Sounds good.
Yes, I absolutely love your book. I haven't read a book that I still have a book hangover, and it's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I hear that a lot. That people develop a book hangover for a couple of days or even a bit longer, or that the book, stuck with them for weeks or months even.
I can't pick up any of the books Kelly's trying to get me to read.
I'm not sure if I should apologize.
No, it's so good. It's so good. And Kelly's really not a dark romance kind of girl. And I was like, you gotta read this, please. The writing is just phenomenal. And I'm glad she did.
Yeah, I put a lot of love in that story.
It definitely a lot of emotion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How long had you been thinking about the story and the characters before you sat down to write it?
Um, I want to say maybe like half a year, but I don't really actively think about it. It's just that, an idea pops into my head in whichever way that happens. And I don't do any active thinking about it. I'm just aware it's there. And I just let it kind of like, ferment in the back of my mind. And I just go about to my thing. And that is usually all it takes. At some point, my brain is like, it's done. We can write it now. And I'm like, cool, let's get to it.
Real quick, I'm Raven. Nice to meet you.
I'm Kelly.
Okay, I can see your name, so that's going to be helpful.
Perfect.
Of course, you know who I am.
Is that no, I that's not your real name, right?
No, no, it's a pen name.
Okay, good. Or maybe
Hmm.
not good, but just curious.
Yep, no,
The
it's a
good
pen
one.
name.
How'd you come up with that one?
What's that?
How'd you come up with that pet name?
I don't know. I think I just rolled the dice, honestly. I have no idea. I just tried to find something that, has a certain ring to it.
It
And
definitely does.
that's it. I have a total of five pen names, so I literally just, go to some like website that just tosses names around and I'm like, that's nice, let's just take it.
No, do you have
So, do you have
other
books
books?
published under all five pen names?
Yeah, I have a total of something between 60 and 70 published books. Not
Okay.
all of them novel length though, so that includes a couple of novelettes and like shorter books as well, but yeah, something between 60 and 70.
I'm gonna need a list of those.
No. I hear that a lot, but no, nobody gets a list. Nobody.
Okay.
There's literally only one person who knows all of my pen names, and that's the gentleman who handles my estate in case that I drop dead, so that my kids actually have access to all of that. But like, not even my mom knows all my pen names. Not even my
Now,
friend knows all of my pen names.
now,
Oh,
are these books like sold in store, or are they just
Some like one of those pen names is like a hybrid pen name, so it has publishing deals with traditional publishers on like select series. Um,
uh-huh.
but like Liv Zander is definitely it's my favorite pen name. And it's the one that gets most of my love and attention. And it's probably the one that is going to keep me busy for the next couple of years because I just feel most home in anything dark.
Yes.
I also have a pen name for rom-coms. Um,
okay.
a lot of people find impossible, how can you write something that's so dark and how can you write something that's actually funny and uplifting with like all the consent and everything? I'm like, yeah, I actually can. I can. I just prefer the dark stuff.
Yeah. I'm a dark girly. Definitely. I started out with all the nice, cute rom-coms, and then it just dwindled into really dark, dark stuff.
Yeah, same. That's just where I feel at home.
What
Um,
is your favorite thing, or what do you love the most about writing dark romance?
I want to say the authenticity of it because I myself try to live as my most authentic self. And with all the good parts and like all the, bad and ugly parts about me, um, and I generally don't write anything that hasn't been done somewhere in this world to some person, because part of, being authentic is accepting that humans don't always display the best behavior. And I just like the psychology behind it and the meaning behind that.
so a lot of the very dark stuff in your books, did you like, I don't know if it's from experience, or like research on some of those topics? Was that
It's
something
not
you
so much, it's not so much personal experience in terms of, it's something that I
yeah.
went through. But I love connecting. I love connecting with people, all sorts of people. I love talking to strangers. Um, and a lot of times I just collect, the their experiences because they tell me, how they navigate life, the stuff that they hurt them, the stuff that they experienced that made them grow, for example. And I just soak it all up like a sponge, because there's a really so I live in San Antonio and there's a really nice bar at Hotel Emma and I love that place. It's my favorite place because that bar has a couple of like massive couches. Of course, if you come with a big group, you can all sit down over there, but that's usually not the case. So it's usually just me, a friend, maybe, two friends. So it's like two or three people on this massive couch. Naturally, other people will come look for a place to sit down, and I'm going to sit among complete strangers. And I love that because, and my friends hate that because I'm always the one who talks to complete strangers. They find that so weird. But I find it fascinating because I really want to know, like, where are you coming from? What have you experienced? How are you, navigating the ups and downs of life? And I just soak it up and I take that and I place a lot of those things into my books. But some of my readers know that, many do not, but I have completed a degree in psychology, and that definitely a lot of that goes into the books as well.
That's really cool. But yeah, I was gonna ask about the psychology thing because you mentioned that. That's cool. Really big question. Now, Feather So Vicious.
Hmm,
How do you pronounce their names?
I don't know. Because I'm from Germany. I was born and raised over there. I came to the United States like 14 years ago, I want to say. And it's so funny because when the company who Dreamscape, when they did for the audiobook production, they usually get in touch with me and they're like, "You have all these weird names. How do you pronounce them?" And I always tell the narrator to pronounce them the way they think, an American would, because naturally I'm going to pronounce them differently because I will naturally kind of like assign them a more German pronunciation. So that is why I generally don't make any statement when it comes to like, how do you pronounce names? Because I swear I pronounce them completely different than like 95% of my readership. So I always
I
tell them however you hear it in your head, that's probably the correct way.
we've settled on Sabine and Mailer.
Okay. Yeah, mine is completely in my head. It's completely different, but
Can
that's
you will you tell me what's in your head?
so Malir, Sabian, Galantia. So those that's the way I hear that.
Okay.
But again,
We-
like don't let that influence you at all
No,
because
no, no.
like that's never going, most of my I mean, the United States offers us so many readers. So I really don't want to get involved with that with my very strange German pronunciation of things and, confuse readers.
No, I think that's good to hear what's in your head and how you pictured this. Now, when did you start writing Feather So Vicious?
Eh, I wrote that down over here, but I wrote down so much and now I can't find it. Okay, so I think I started writing it probably I think it was like summer 2022, like summer, fall 2022. I usually take a very long time to get started on books. So that means it could take me half a year to write the first act and half a year to write the entire rest of the entire story because I have the tendency to get started on the first act and rewrite it until the plot and the voices of the characters are just right. So I remember that I went to Dallas, so it was around summer, end of summer, 2022, and that was when I had started and I had written maybe the first 6 or 7 chapters, and I was still revising and being like, it's good, but it's not yet what it needs to be or what it wants to be. And then I came home from my trip, and then around fall, I was like slowly like getting all the voices right. And then I rewrote the first act like one final time. I was like, okay, this is it. And then I continued from there. Yeah, so yep, I think summer 2022 is when I started.
Oh, you've already put both of them out, the first and second one. What's
Yeah, they were pretty close together. So I think Feathers So Vicious published in summer 2023, and I think Shadows So Cruel only 2 months later. So I consider they're both, I mean, together it's a pretty big story. It's like what? It's like 800, something between 800 and 900 pages. So considering the size of the story, I think I wrote it pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, that is pretty quick. It's very impressive, and they're both so good. It's not. I didn't feel sometimes authors I feel like will rush to get out a second or whatever because the fans want it, but this didn't. It was great, great
Yeah,
flow. It
I'm
did not.
not, I am
It was
totally
really
not like
good.
that. Like everyone has to wait because it's literally a motto of Liv Zander that I write whatever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I want to. So people just have to wait. And again, like it can take me forever to just write the first act until I'm completely happy. Once I have that, I get faster.
Yeah.
But like the first act is just it's excruciating.
Do you have
Um.
any pet peeves about the industry, or like the dark
I
romance fantasy
I'm
genre?
actually I'm not very involved in the industry. I'm very much like holding myself up and doing my very own thing. Of course, I research the market and I know what is trending and all that stuff. I have a couple of very select few author friends. But other than that, I generally don't get involved in like any of the industry drama. Um, a pet peeve of mine is probably people calling a romance dark for the sake of the marketing benefit when because I mean you know that I can write pretty dark. I write pretty dark. I could write even darker, but I'm trying to behave myself.
No.
And so especially for me, like I have my definition of dark and it's pretty dark. And I just dislike when I read something and I expect dark and it's not. It's like they're trying to go there, but they're never really going all the way, which
Mm.
I understand, it takes guts to go there. And some authors might think like, oh, I want to write dark, but at the end, it's maybe not for them to actually go to that place.
I I
Um,
made a comment. I made a comment about how a lot of books will have trigger warnings, and then I
yeah.
get into the books, and the trigger warnings are not accurate to the book. And I was like, this book, but though, if you read the trigger warnings, actually consider them because they are real.
Yeah, they definitely belong in there and they're there for a reason. And I always try to make them, I try to catch them all, but it's always such a personal thing. There are things that I would never consider to be a trigger, but someone else might. So I always have to rely on readers a little bit and fans to be like, okay, but like there's this trigger, for example, so I can't just include that. I try to make the list as complete as possible, but um I always let people know like the trigger list for my books exist for a reason. And like I mean it when I say like check the triggers. And
Yeah.
I always make sure when I format my books, the very first page, your Kindle or whatever will open it to is check the triggers. I place them on my website as not to spoil it because some people don't want to be aware of the triggers. They want to go in blind. So I try to cater to them as well. But people can go to my website and they have a list, long list of trigger warnings. So they can just make an educated decision because obviously I know that I write things that can be very triggering, very uncomfortable for many people. And mental health is
It's
very important to me. And so it's very important to me that people can make a choice that's healthy for them.
I love that you have a psychology background and you are writing the best dark like romance stuff there is. It's so great.
I can still go darker.
I know, please, if you have anything, send it my way. Like that is my
I'm actually thinking that I might just write the worst dude I have ever written right now. It's pretty bad, but I always find it so funny when I come across reviews and readers would write something like, oh, like there can't possibly be like a darker guy in a book. And I'm like, well, like it sounds like a challenge to me.
Hold my drink.
I think I can do that. So I could go much darker, but at the same time, I don't want to be dark for the shock factor of it. That's not what it's like wherever there's darkness, it's there for a reason. And it's not for marketing purposes. It usually is related to, the character arc. Um, so I'm trying to go dark and to go authentic, but also to remain as realistic as possible.
It is, there's definitely so many times in that book that I was like, one, I was emotionally attached to the book, which is good. And there was so many times there that I caught myself gasping and like just so into it. And I have questions about these ravens. Like what is can you why the five ravens? I know it's for unkindness, but
So
like
three of them hold the physical human body, the physical form.
okay,
One of them is required for the shifting, and the other one holds the gift.
okay.
Um, and there's really no specific reason as to like why I decided, oh, we should have five ravens. I don't know. Maybe I rolled the dice. I don't know, and was like, oh, five. Okay, five ravens. Um, I don't know. That's like I don't put too much thought into, these things. It just seemed to make sense because like a human body requires quite a bit of space. So it would make sense that it requires more than one raven, to me at least. Um,
Yeah.
that's really all there is to it. So that's
Man,
why I decided to do it.
I definitely love it. Now, if you had to choose, I have to ask between Sabine or Mailer. What? Oh, are
No.
you gonna take both?
No, I'm taking none of them. I'm taking none of them. And it's so funny because I get that question a lot. And my readers talk about that a lot, in the reading group. They're like, "Oh my God, like which of your male characters would you want?" I'm like, "They are fucked up. None of them. Why would I? That's awful."
I
You
mean,
know, I love reading about them. I love being with them in these fantasy worlds. Do I want one of those dudes to move in with me? No, fuck no,
no,
absolutely no, it's because at the end of the day, there's so much discussion about like romanticizing abuse and toxic relationships. And I think it's important that, I'm not trying to romanticize any of it. Like, granted, the women in my books, they always try to make the best of it. It's like when you get settled with that dude, gotta try to make the best of it. But in real life, it is also supposed to be a warning because, of course, in real life, and women these days are so very much more aware of like toxic behavior or red flags or cluster B personality disorders, whatever it is, so that we can, make better choices when it comes to the partners and the men in our lives. But I would choose Malir.
okay, good.
Yeah, I don't know. I go for the broken ones,
Look,
so
listen, if
I
we're in
hope
a
it makes
fantasy
sense.
world, I'm taking both.
I don't know. I don't know. Now I would take Madir because like he's my guy. But it's like he holds a very special place in my heart because I remember when I finished the Pale Court, I was thinking naturally I should write the next duet about one of the other god brothers, right? But there was always um this very sad young boy with long black hair that I saw in my dreams when I was awake. He was like always there. He was crying and he was like looking at me from those tear-filled eyes. And I knew he belonged to a story, but I couldn't really figure out yet, like where. I'm like, who are you? Like, what do you want from, like, he wanted my help. I understood that, but so I have so many stories living inside of me. Sometimes I need a little bit of time to decide, okay, this belongs over here and this actually belongs into this world. So it took me a while to realize like where he actually comes from. And I was literally saying to that boy, like, I would really like to help you, but I'm supposed to write this other series. But then he looked at me, with those big eyes and his long black hair. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna write your story. I'm gonna write you out of that dungeon somehow. And that is when I shifted my attention, to him. And so he does hold a very special place because if that little boy wouldn't have, suddenly appeared like in my dreams or my daydreams, or just randomly pop into my head, then maybe the story would never have appeared on paper.
That is that is fascinating.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is how it works for other authors, but like that it's how it works for me.
Yeah, I enjoy writing, but listening to how you view it, that is definitely not how I view it.
It's
I don't.
it it seems to work, so I just stick with it.
Um, do you have any professional goals, like seeing a book turned into a movie or um, doing like a specific, getting interviewed by a specific celebrity or something like that? Do you have any interesting professional
None,
goals? No?
none, zero, which is probably a very strange answer. I mean, it would be nice, if there would be a movie one day. I think generally, Liv Zander is very dark. It's difficult to find someone who would touch that without changing too much. And that would be great, but it's really not a goal of mine. I want to say that professionally as a writer, I have already achieved so much. I can always achieve more, but I'm not the kind of person who's always chasing after more. I'm more like chasing about, again, like being my authentic self and just like living over here in my little happy place. I I don't really write to, make more money. I don't write to be more popular or more famous or more talked about or to get more attention. I really only write so that I can like pay my bills and have a sense of like safety and security for me and my two boys. And other than that, I just want to do the things that kind of like fulfill me, be it like working out or, spending time with my friends or volunteering or I recently started pole dancing. That's my new, it's my new hobby now and my newest obsession. So I run to the studio a lot and do that. And just be there with other people and connect. Like connection is really important to me, and I want to make like very deep and meaningful connections with the souls around me, and that's really what I focus on. And I'm already doing that. Again, like the other stuff would be nice, but it's not something I'm chasing after. I'm in a very happy, content place. I could stay here until I die. I'd be okay.
When you sit down to write, do you have any pre-ritual or rituals that you have when you sit down to write? Like you have to have your certain coffee or your certain chair or your certain sweater or something like that. Do you-
No, not even
no?
that. Because I'm
No.
so no, but I can tell you that my office always resembles the state of the manuscript, okay? Usually when I start a new book, I clean my entire office, okay, like a real deep clean. But then you can see a couple of weeks into the manuscript, like it's just a mess. And then I get stuck usually. And the very first thing when I get stuck is I clean my office. So a lot of times people, friends who know me, and like they ring the door, my boys let them in, they come into the office, and I'm over here like a frantic mess, and they look at my office and they're like, oh, damn, like you're stuck, right? Because like this is like you have like seven coffee mugs standing like strewn about the office, like it's really bad. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta clean up.
Or
So
if it's super clean, that means that you're in the middle of writing,
it's
or
I
you are ran out of ideas.
it's almost like I need to clean my space in the same way I try to kind of like clean and declutter and organize my mind, and then I can usually get back to the story. But other than that, I don't really have, I just like I work from home like most authors do, but I have two boys and I homeschool them, which means that they are home all day long, except for the afternoon when they go to like a karate after school program. But that also, I'm also a single mom, so that means that I sometimes have to, kind of like squeeze writing time in. And there's not really the time for me to be like, oh, well, but first I have to put my favorite sweater on and then I have to, get my favorite candle and I have to make my favorite tea. I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have time to be extra and special. I have so much going on. I just need to put my butt in the chair and write a book.
Yeah, that's a lot on your plate, being
It
a
is.
mom and a homeschool parent. That's a lot.
It is. It is. But we're making it work. So we have a pretty good routine.
Great.
How
Awesome.
old are they?
They are 11 and 13.
Sure. I mean, at
So
least
they're
they're,
still pretty, independent and everything.
yeah.
They know the drill. They know what they have to do. They know exactly how important it is that, I have my time to write and that they don't interrupt, for example. We're still practicing the not interrupting thing. Um, but yeah, no, it's working.
Um, Question. If
Yeah.
you were to ever suggest an author besides yourself to someone, who would you recommend? Like, is there another author that you actually really like?
Um, I said this before on a different podcast, and I really hate making this statement because it goes so much against what authors recommend young authors. Everyone says like you should read a lot, and I actually don't read at all for two reasons. The first thing is that, I spend so much time reading my manuscript, and then in the evening, my eyes are tired. I don't want to read anymore. But I also get imposter syndrome super quick, okay? Like I pick up a good book, and then I'm like, oh my God, this book is so good. I will never write a book this good. I'm just a fraud. I'm not even a real author. And then I get writer's block for like a month, and that's not cool. So I just don't read, If I don't read any good books, then I can't get imposter syndrome. I read so when it comes to fiction, and I buy a lot of books and I tell myself I would read them, but I just never do. Um, so when it comes to like fiction, I have no recommendation whatsoever. I would literally recommend, books from authors. Like I wouldn't have read the books, but I would be like, but I know the author and she's like the sweetest soul. So based on that, you should probably read it. I read a lot of nonfiction, self-help books, self-development, like psychology, of course, as well. And there's a book that published not long ago. Maybe you heard of it. It's the let them theory.
The what?
Let
Let them?
the let them theory. I forgot the name of the author, but anyway, so that is a self-help book, and I actually listened to the audiobook, but it was like it very resonated, and I actually recommend that book to a lot of people. Um, it's it really tries to teach you to focus on what you can control and let go of what you cannot control, which is a lot of times other people and the things, they say or do not do. And instead of us getting hung up on that, we just say like, let them do whatever they want to do and let me focus on what I can control and what brings, for example, happiness and fulfillment to my life. So that is a book I recently read, and that is very good.
Oh,
Awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna look that up.
You should
yeah.
like I gifted so many audiobooks to so many friends. I'm like, you should read this, it's gonna make you happier.
Yeah. It's like we were trying to write it down as we're going.
So I know that you have published, you said over 60 books. And I did a tiny, tiny bit of research. And you had mentioned somewhere else that you were traditionally published in Germany before you moved to the United States and began publishing here.
Mhm.
Um, what do you feel like um, when you're trying to find your voice as a writer or as a young writer? in your process, what helped you the most in trying to find your writing voice?
Writing,
Just
because
writing. Okay.
it really comes with time. I have to say that my I am not sure if I'm pretty sure that my German writing voice would be very different from my English one. But at the same time, I also know that my English writing voice stands out because I use sentence structures that are grammatically correct but not often applied. Simply because a lot of my, thinking as to how I structure sentences is based in like German language. Um, and it's really just, with time, the more words you write, the more you will find into your own writing voice. So that's really truly the only recommendation, I can make. This just write, play around with it a little bit because, like I said, like also have like a pen name that wrote like rom-coms, for example, and of course the some things could identify me as like, oh, this is similar to how Liv Zander would write it, but there's a difference when it comes to, of course, the lightness of it and these things. But honestly, to discover the voice, it's probably just having to sit down and write as much as possible.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
only like two more questions. We'll let you go. What, unless you want to stay, you're more than welcome. I just don't want to hold up any of your time. Um,
I still have time, so the concert isn't until like, tonight, so still plenty of time.
what is your uh, biggest sell, I guess you would say your biggest selling book or
Um, well, I would say
only if I'm allowed to know because I know you have pet names.
it is probably the Court of Ravens. Because like not only looking at like right now there's a lot of attention on Court of Ravens, but even before then it has been performing really well, but in a very consistent way. And I remember when I launched Feathers So Vicious, I was actually a little bit disappointed because I think it only got into the top 400 and I expected it to do better. And I was like, oh, well, sometimes you just hit it and sometimes you don't. And I, it really took time and me looking at the numbers where I was like, oh, King of Flesh and Bone was way more successful. But then I looked at the sales numbers and I'm like, that's not even true, because King of Flesh and Bone had this spike and then it tapered off. And like the Court of Ravens has just, continuously been like performing so, so well. But if you don't look at numbers, and I don't look at numbers all too often, so that was really required for me to realize that it is a very strong performing, series, like super reliable. And of course, there's Spike right now, which is fantastic. Um, got a lot of attention, and I'm happy to say that it allowed me to bring the series to many more languages so that even more people can read it and hopefully enjoy it. um, but yeah, Court of Ravens is definitely like the best performing also in terms of like a very consistent healthy way of performing.
Yeah, I've recommended that book to several people now.
Yeah, and I also think that it's one of from a psychological perspective, it's one of my more complex books. Um, there's a lot of psychology in that book with just about any character. Um, and I'm glad that it's so well received because I told you earlier, like a lot of love, I poured a lot of love into this book, and I really tried to make it psychologically, sound. That was very important to me because they really all dealt with such heavy trauma. So it was important to me to, not gloss it over and really depict it in a very realistic way. So I love all my stories and everything, but like Court of Ravens will probably always be like a true like love child of mine.
Yeah, it's it yes. I praise that book. I have lots of books. It was very good.
I love it too.
So what's next in for your writing? Do you have some ideas percolating? Are you working on something right now? Are you taking a break?
Um, I was kind of like forced to take a break for the last 1.5 years because I was just not able to write. I mean, I did write, but I usually I abandoned like full projects. I wrote like, the first act or like close to like the end of the first act, and I struggled with emotionally connecting with any of it. It felt very like I actually didn't feel anything at all, because usually, I write very emotional books, and if I write something and I'm not emotionally in it, then it feels very boring to me. And it wasn't boring. It was just my perception because I ran it by, friends and readers. And I'm like, is this boring? They're like, no, this is like amazing. I'm like, okay, so it's not the writing or the content, but still, if I can't connect to it and I almost fall to sleep writing it because it doesn't move me at all, then there's very little motivation when it comes to like writing anything. But that has more to do with the fact that I had to, in the last 1.5 years, I had to get used to the role of, being a single mom. I had to heal from whatever happened in my marriage. I had to not only like, establish my now very peaceful life, but I also had to learn that this piece is not something that I need to be anxious about simply because it wasn't familiar to me, so it kind of like scared me. So I had to get used to this is how it's supposed to feel, and it's safe and it's good. So there was a lot of that stuff going on, of course, like transitioning, my boys into it's just the three of us now and our two dogs. Um, so that kept me busy. So I want to say that I really couldn't write because I was so busy with my personal growth and probably like also my spiritual growth. Um, but now that I'm like fully settled in that, I was able to kind of like find that spark again and get back and actually feel and be very excited. Um, and some people will be disappointed about this because I did start writing the story about what would follow the Pale Court, so the second god brother. And a lot of people want to have that story. And I wrote it to the end of the first act. And then I couldn't really keep going. And just recently, I was out for dinner with a friend, and he asked me, like, like, what's on your mind right now, project-wise? And I told him about the story that I started pretty much like 1.5 years ago, a year, 1.5 years ago. And I told him about it because he wanted to know, like, what's it about? Who are the characters? What's happening? And I told him, and I grew so animated that the people at the restaurant were turning around to look at me because I probably looked like a lunatic. Um, and it made me realize that like I'm very excited about this story. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go home that night and find the manuscript, which I had written to like the end of the first act, almost to the end of the first act. And I'm like, let read through it, what I actually have so far. And I did that. And I was like, man, this is a really, really good story. And I have actually completed yet another chapter on it yesterday. So this story is, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's Chinese high fantasy, which is called Sanxia. Um, I am a big fan of, Asian movies and Asian like shows, for example, especially like fantasy shows. And this story is very much Xianxia inspired in terms of like how the magic system works. It is it's a scary project because it is truly massive. Like it has a massive, I think 11 character cast. It's actually not a duet because it requires a trilogy. Of course, there are going to be terrible cliffhangers at the end of book one and at the end of book two. Um, and it's a little bit intimidating. It's also not necessarily easy for me to write the world building because it's an alternative Asian inspired world. And a lot of times I lack the vocabulary to kind of like, describe the architecture, for example. And of
Uh-huh.
course, they had other tools than like, European medieval, for example. So I had to look that up to be somewhat accurate and all that stuff. So that slows me down. But it is a very, very nice story. And the dude is just absolutely awful. Worst guy I've ever written. So that alone is a lot of motivation. So as of right now, I'm giving that story all of my love and attention. But I might as well abandon it again. I don't know. Because again, I told you earlier, I write whatever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I want to. And if I can't, then I just go do something else, like, take a walk with my dogs or go pole dancing or I don't know, until I feel as though, okay, now I can, get back to it. And I know readers wait for books and I want to give it to them. But at the same time, I would never rush through anything. I really take my time because there was a time early in my writing career where I had to crank out one book after another to keep the momentum going. And I just hated that. And I told myself that I am no longer working with deadlines, for example. Like I'm not doing it anymore. It causes me too much stress for no valid reason. So I'm just not doing it anymore. And readers just have to wait.
I love that. I uh personally, I feel like there's a lot out there that has kind of like that English medieval um, sway to it, a lot of Norse, and so I would love to read something that's a little bit inspired by other cultures.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that would be fantastic. I always found Asian cultures very interesting. Obviously they're like very foreign, very exotic to most of us. And I love it, the different clothing, the different habits, the magic system that is very different from what we usually read. And I would love to take the readers to like a completely different place and be like, let's go that way, because I really try to be very immersive with this world building because it's necessary, because it might be unfamiliar for so many. But it is, I mean, it's a dark place, but the world itself is very vibrant and very colorful and just absolutely lovely. And it's like stuffed full with hot guys, obviously. Um, and yeah, I think people will love it.
But no rush, but when can I expect this?
No idea. Maybe this year, maybe never. Like I really
Is
do not know.
now is it gonna be a Liv Zander?
It's going to be Liv Zander, yeah.
All right. I
Absolutely.
know to
Yeah,
look out for it.
it starts so dark that I already considered that I might have to adjust some things just so the book won't be banned, because if all the really bad stuff happens in the first four chapters, it's probably just a little bit overkill. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to tone it down just a little.
I
Um,
mean,
but I'm going to, keep writing and typing away on it and then see what I can do with it because I am not a plotter, but I'm also not a pantser. I'm kind of like a very strange, weird in-between type of person. So I usually plot out like the character arcs and all the major plot points, but everything in between, I have no idea what's going on. So a lot of times, I just need to feel my way into and through the story. And then like sometimes I surprise myself with, with like plot twists because I didn't even see them coming. I was literally writing the chapter, my brain was like, plot twist. I'm like, oh
you're
my God,
so you
you are
did
so
so good
smart.
with
This is
those.
genius. Like I don't like that's pure luck. Like I never planned that out. It's just my weird brain just throwing that at me. And
They're
again,
great.
this is a really, really massive, massive project. And I actually have no experience with writing trilogies. So this is like new to me when it comes to like making sure the structure is just right. So that I know that's going to cause me like minor meltdowns here and there, but I'll manage.
That's exciting. And you did
So
the plot twists are amazing.
yeah, I really enjoyed your plot twist for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I enjoy them too. I'm just always so surprised where they come from. It's literally like sometimes my brain would wake me up at 2 a.m. and I'm like, huh. My brain is like, I have a great idea for a plot twist, you know? And I'm like, okay, all right. Like, again, it's this, back of my brain. I don't think actively about that because I know that my brain provides me with what the story needs. It's like, it's almost as if something inside me knows all the plot twists, but never shares them with me until I actually write them, you know? And in the beginning of my writing career, that was very frustrating because I thought I wanted to know it right away, right? But that's just not how that works. And eventually I had to just give up and accept that I will not know. It comes when it's ready. It comes when I need it, you know?
yeah, for sure. Are you going to write any pole dancers in your class or
I
in your books?
don't, I really don't know. I might. I have no idea. It might just happen. I'm like contemporary romance is the one thing that really doesn't interest me all too much because I prefer to build my own worlds. But every now and then, you know, there might be something in my own life that inspires me. But then I'm like, oh, wow, but that would be contemporary. I don't know what to do with that. But I also started, like during that time when I started and abandoned so many projects, there was also a reverse age gap romance that I started writing pretty much to the end of Act One, and then I abandoned it. But that actually, I have to say that that story has so much potential, and it's not dark. It's dark in terms of like the backstory of the characters and what they went through, but it actually has a very cheerful tone to it, you know. And at some point I need to go back to that story because it's so great and there are so many like there's an increased interest in like reverse age gap. There was just a movie with like Nicole Kidman. I didn't watch it. I don't know. I don't
Uh,
think it was a romance. I think it was more like a thriller.
it was very monotone, like the whole.
Yeah, I didn't want to I was turned off by it. I thought it would be a romance, but then I was getting thriller vibes from the trailer, but then I also got the impression that she's actually cheating on her husband, and that kind of like turned me off completely. So I never watched it. But it's reverse age gap, and then there's this show on Netflix called Younger. Not sure if you heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't
So
watched it.
I have started watching it, but I actually don't watch much TV. But there seems to be there seems to be more interest in that. It would be nice if I could one day, finish that story because it's a truly lovely story. But first I need to write this Xianxia story for sure.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm pumped for that. If you need
Um,
motivation, I've got you. I will message you every day. You go.
I can if you ask nicely, maybe I'm gonna send you the first 7 chapters.
Don't do
ooh.
that.
Yeah, it's some people read them and they are very excited about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited for the different like take on it. Like, because I feel like a lot of the fantasy, like Court of Ravens was great because the whole plot was different. It was different from what I've been reading. And
yeah,
I feel like there's like a consistency and with all of these
I hear that a
fantasy.
lot. I think I hear that a lot, and you see that in reviews every now and then, where people are like, "Oh, like this is so different." It's like the world is so different, or the plot is so different, or like whatever it is. And I really think a lot has to do with the fact that I don't read much, fiction, so I cannot be as influenced from what everyone else is writing. But I'm also the kind of person, I have always been the kind of writer. When I first heard about like, um, fated mates, for example, the trope, I literally was like, I want to write that, but I'm gonna turn it completely upside down. I see something and I'm like, this is so great, let's turn it inside out. Let's use it, but make it entirely different. And I'm really not really doing that for any specific goal other than me thinking, oh, this is fun, you know? And maybe that is how, you get like Raven shifters and strange magic systems and whatnot.
It's beautiful. It's
I'm glad
beautiful.
I'm glad that you love it so much.
Yes, it's definitely.
I I love it. I love it too. I sometimes listen to the audiobook. If I want to put myself into a depressed state or something, I'm like, oh, I'll read my book. Um,
I remember I read the book and I left a comment on, I don't know if it was Goodreads or Kindle or whatever. And I
mm.
was like, 5 stars, praising. And I read below mine, someone was complaining about the triggers. And I was like, oh no, no, no. Their trigger warnings are correct. You saw them. You had the choice to read it or not. I was like so offended. I was like, don't you say one bad word about this book.
It is so funny that you bring that up because 2 or 3 days ago, my sons came and they're like, how famous are you? Like how famous is Liv Zander? And I'm like, I don't know, kind of a little bit. And my son was like, if I put Liv Zander into Google, is anything gonna come up? I'm like, oh yeah, lots of stuff. So he did that, and he was like, oh my God, like you are like in subreddits. That's like insane. And then my little one, so the 11-year-old, he read through like whatever he found, like a review or something. And like it showed the book cover and then it showed like the review, and the review said something along the lines of like, well, I really didn't like it because it was just so damn dark. And my son says, but it literally said dark on the cover. Like, what did she think she would get? And unfortunately, that happens a lot. You can I mean, again, like like we all definite, there's no one solid definition of dark. It's a highly personal thing. But when I say dark, I really truly actually mean dark. But I also believe that maybe that's another, that kind of like touches on this pet peeve of mine, or when it comes to like the industry, because I think YA fantasy is to blame for that. Because, YA fantasy kind of like try to go dark, to be edgier and like for marketing purposes. And then they were like, oh, this is like dark. But it was still for YA. So it really can't go that dark because that's just, it wouldn't be for the audience. And then someone like me comes along and I write, fantasy romance. And I'm like, this is dark. And people are like YA dark? And I'm like, no, not YA dark. Like I mean it. Like it's really truly dark. Um,
Yeah.
but that might be where some of the confusion comes from. But I think it's about to change because I mean we had fantasy romance, and then we started having like dark fantasy romance. That's pretty much always the trend. You have PNR, then you have dark PNR, you had contemporary romance and then it got darker. And readers just have to get used to the meaning of dark.
Yeah. I like Kelly, her dark is my like light gray.
Yeah,
So
I know. But you can find reviews that say like this is devastatingly dark, and others say, meh, I thought it was darker. That's like there are different flavors of
yeah.
being jaded in this world. And
I
so that's just how it goes.
I look at trigger warnings as like a menu. Like
To me,
the longer the trigger warnings, the better the book.
so yeah, I mean, I usually, when I ever, shop a fiction book, I usually read the one-star reviews. And if one of them tells me that this is like the nastiest thing ever written, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take it.
I'm in.
I didn't even think about
I'm
doing
I'm
that.
I mean, I really, when I shop, I always look for the highest star rating, except for when it comes to books. That's always where I run to the one-star reviews, and that's what sells me the book.
Look at that.
It's
You were
funny. I kind of do the same thing. I look at the one-star reviews and wonder why someone didn't like the book. And they're always very interesting.
Yeah. Um, but I sometimes find them really funny, and I actually regularly go on the hunt for like one-star reviews because I'm like, can I turn this into an ad on Facebook or something? Um, I was disappointed because Court of Ravens doesn't even have all too many like one-star reviews. But a lot of times it's, from people who, I don't know, maybe just really didn't know what they got themselves into. And that,
Yeah, I
that
believe that.
happens. That absolutely happens.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, trigger warnings, people. And but at least because a lot of people just put, I feel like they put out such a vast variety of trigger warnings just to cover anything, just to be safe.
Just to
And
be
it's never,
safe.
and it's
Yeah.
never, and it's never satisfying. It
I
doesn't.
mean, I came across books that had a trigger warning list in the beginning that was so disappointing for me, um, where I'm like, this really shouldn't be triggers. But then again, like I'm generally a person, there's not much that triggers me actually. So maybe I'm just really not, it shouldn't be measured by my own standard. So I understand that. But again, that's where I rely on my readers for a little bit of, guidance. And I'm like, okay, did you notice anything, that that should be mentioned, something that I was not aware of?
Hmm. It's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you take a lot of the comments and like criticism, like,
None.
you know, does it affect you?
No. I mean, it did. I mean, not anymore. In the beginning, do you guys hear this? Someone is on top of my roof right now.
I can't
No,
hear.
I can't hear
You
it.
don't hear the banging. That's if you hear it, I'm sorry. We had a terrible storm yesterday, and I lost like 30% of my shingles. And the guy is certainly checking out the roof because, like, right on top of my office because he's like banging over there. But anyway, so if you do hear it, I apologize. But in the beginning. In the beginning, like a one-star review might devastate me, and I would hide in my bedroom with chocolate and wine for like 3 days, okay? But then, as time went on, I had to realize like this is just, part of like being an author or an artist in general. And then, of course, when I launched Liv Zander, that was a different story because I already knew that there's going to be a lot of negative backlash simply because it's like, dark stuff. Um, I was prepared for it. But then when King of Flesh and Bone went viral on, I think it was a TikTok, that brought an amount of nastiness to my doorstep that even I wasn't fully prepared for. Um, a lot of chocolate was eaten during that time, and a lot of wine was being had, and I also ate a lot of bread and tiramisu for like a week or two. I was like a mess. Until I realized that it's making me a lot of money, and then I was cool with it. Now I have to say, after, all this time with Liv Zander, it's not just Liv Zander, but it's like, again, like I had a lot of like personal and spiritual growth, and that really helped me develop like a PhD in not giving a shit, okay? Like I really do not care, like at all. I mean, it's great if someone praises my book, but nothing's going to be influenced or changed because of the praise, And if someone is tearing it apart, then I don't know. Sometimes it's actually entertaining to read that, because some people can get really upset and emotional, and it's almost funny. But yeah, no, I don't really, it doesn't influence me at all.
You're
And
gonna
it
make me, you're gonna
doesn't
make
change.
me go on TikTok and start a riot with these people.
I
Raven is gonna become your number one defender.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like, please, like, I'm gonna pay you for it because even that, like, it's, it's like fuel to the fire. And I mean, controversy, sells books as well. And theoretically, I knew that, but I have not experienced that until, like King of Flesh and Bone. I was like, you know what, I'm actually cool with it. I remember I came across a one-star review that said like, this is the worst book ever written, and this is just awful. But because there was this awful cliffhanger at the end of book one, I am forced to buy book two. And I was like, okay, I mean, like it kind of works for me, like if that is how I can, allow to enroll my boys in karate, for example, so be it. Like it's cool, I can live with that. You know? But
I
it definitely, I'm pretty sure that most authors, develop, thicker skin through the years. It just comes with the territory.
It's like if you're gonna hate buy my book versus love buy my book, I still get the same amount of money.
Yeah, I know. If you love it, hate it, like I don't care. If you bought it, like like you're my hero. Like that's fantastic, you know? Of course, I want people to enjoy the book, but like not every book is for every reader. That's just what it is. And
Yeah.
there are plenty of got like you said that you like the writing style. There are so many people who hate my writing style, and that's okay too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I mean, like she said, I'm not super into dark romance, but I loved your writing style. Like I feel like you can appreciate a good writer even if the spice is very spicy for me.
Yeah, I know. It is. I'm not sure if this current no, actually, you know what? It's gonna be spicy, this one. Yeah, like it's gonna be
Yes.
gonna burn a little.
Yes.
It definitely unleashed some kinks that I didn't know I had.
Yeah, I know. I get the strangest fan mail sometimes, because it would be like, "Oh my God, thanks to you, I developed like I found a new kink." Like, all right, well, thanks for sharing that with me, that made
Oh,
my day.
it's great.
They're like, "Oh, I didn't like, we had like my husband and I, we had a dead bedroom and now we're just at it like every day thanks to you." I'm like, "Okay, I'm glad I'm helping." Or like, you literally contributed to the making of my baby. Oh, all right, I'll take it.
How
I
many
got
babies are out there named Liv Zander?
I don't know. I really think that I might increase the birth rate just slightly, maybe, you know? And that's pretty cool. Like I like it. Um
Yeah.
it's yeah, there's I always try to place, some kinks into my books just to keep it interesting. And it seems to be working. People seem to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even, I honestly, if I could have more of one thing, I don't think there's anything that I would need more of. I mean,
I try to keep a good balance between, spice and plot, especially with the Court of
oh my
Rain.
God. I just remembered the ending. I was like, wow, that is something new. I'm gonna,
Oh, what, like the Court of Ravens?
yes, yes, the
Like the
ending.
like the very ending?
Yes, with
Hmm.
the knife.
Hmm.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't really see that coming either, but like it happens. It absolutely happens.
I mean, our podcast is spoilers, so it's okay to have spoiler talks on here.
Okay.
Um, the dungeon scene when he peed in the bucket,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, no. I was like, no way, this is absolutely
It's
diabolical. This is insane.
eh, but then, like I said, earlier, like there's never anything really in my books that, is not happening somewhere, here in this world. And there are the like very there are people who do terrible things. They're like the wildest kinks out there that I still, discover, for example. Did you know that there's a crucifixion kink? Well, now you
No.
know. I didn't know until like a year ago, and I was like, what?
Wouldn't that just be in like BDSM, bondage and stuff like that? Or is that like where they actually
Yes,
are like,
but some people actually take it so far and they have themselves nailed to a cross or nailed to something. And like I didn't know that existed, but I don't judge. But I was like, okay, interesting.
Well, I look forward
I
to
will not
reading
put it
about
in
it
the,
in
I
your
will not,
next book.
I will absolutely, that is probably the one kink I will not put in a book,
Oh, okay.
I just
I was
I just
like,
had
nah,
lots of
I'm
thoughts.
I'm gonna draw the line at this one. Like, this is not gonna make it into the book.
No, but that just opened up a window of like the craziest things. Like my brain is over here going in dark places right now.
I know, but it's interesting because when you put kink into your books, like you need to do a little bit of research, because just because it's in my book does not mean that that's something I like, for example. And then sometimes I just need to go out to other people or find people who are willing to talk with me about it, so I just understand it a little bit better. Luckily, like San Antonio has like a very healthy kink community, and I met some really great people, who are open about like, what is it about that turns you on, especially from a male perspective, because sometimes it's easier for me to figure it out myself, from a female perspective, but maybe not the male one. So that's where the research goes.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of voyeurism.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of things that I've discovered that I might like.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting job if you have to do things like, oh, I have to interview a male escort, for example, for a potential book idea, it's fun. It's fun. I like this job.
Yeah, I was super excited to talk to you. I've been raving about it ever since. I was like, I wonder, let me just shoot my shot and see if she answers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always try to answer like everyone unless like it's just too crazy and there's too much stuff going on. But I try to be, open and accessible to people because at the end of the day, I'm just, I'm like I might be Liv Zander on Amazon, but like over here, I'm just a very, very, very normal woman with a very dark and kinky mind, maybe, but like overall pretty normal.
Yeah,
Your mind is beautiful.
we really appreciate it. We sometimes have a hard time making things like this work because we live on very different time zones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I can absolutely relate to that because all of my family is in Germany. So I always have to, make sure that I don't call them in the middle of the night by accident. I got used to it, obviously. But yeah, I have a lot of friends across like different continents or like all the way at the West Coast. And then sometimes it's a little bit different. I want to talk to them at like 10 in the morning. I'm like, she's still sleeping, like there's no way. Um, that's but we always make it work, don't we?
Yeah, we made it work.
We do.
yeah. Well, thank you.
No, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it. I had fun.